You are now listening to the Voices of Dubai.
You're listening
Watching the Voices of Dubai with Joe Hage.
This is the Voices of Dubai.
Olivia, thank you very much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure. Yes, do call me Liv, my voiceover name.
Yes, absolutely. It's Olivia, aka Liv.
Yes, I know. Clients get very confused.
And you call yourself, your website is Liv's Voice, correct?
That's right, livsvoice.com and my Instagram and everything. Yes, I try to keep it in one brand.
We'll keep these in the show notes as well, so people can follow you.
Lovely.
Of course. I remember the first time we met was in 2015.
Gosh, was it 2015?
Yes. And I was working at the time at Montage TV Productions as a sound engineer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the exact session was, but thankfully you keep records of all your recordings, which is really awesome. So it happened that we recorded a TV commercial for Lux.
That's right, Lux. Just a little Lux. I think it was something like that on the tagline.
Was that the tagline?
I think so.
Nice.
Yes.
Would you mind repeating that for our listeners?
Just a little Lux.
Brilliant.
I tried to find my softer, sexier side, but not too sexy for the GCC region.
Yeah,
you have to think about where you're voicing for.
Yeah, it has to be like PG-13.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Since then, I've really had the pleasure of working together on so many projects throughout the years, and here we are today on the Voices of Dubai.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for having me. Yes.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Do you remember your first voiceover project ever?
Oh, well, it's a tricky one because I came from the directing producing route, and then that was in London, directing producing in-house for broadcasters, and then I started presenting in-house, and from that started doing voiceovers. But really the first ones I really remember was when I was working for, it was a shopping network, and I was voicing jewelry commercials and products like that, kind of infomercials. So there wasn't the glamorous side of the voiceover world, but that's how I did it in-house, really, and then started to find my love for it from that,
So that was in the UK, you were still in the UK?
That was in the UK, in London, yes. And after that I worked for Discovery Channel and the Sci-Fi Channel, and again at the Sci-Fi Channel I was presenting gaming interstitials and voicing those.
Wow.
So there were review shows of new games coming out, PS whatever it was at the time, PS2 maybe.
Yeah.
I remember there's one for Path of Neo, another one for Pariah. So I was presenting and voicing those as well.
And you still remember these names?
I do, and I guess because I've got videos of them and I've had them on show reels throughout the years, they stick in your mind, yes.
Wow, that's awesome. Could you take us through your career starting in the UK and then moving to Dubai?
Yes, as I said, I always had a passion for TV and production. And that's what I got into post-university. So got down the producing, directing route, producing trailers predominantly, coming up with scripts, conceptualizing, got into the presenting and voice work. And from that, I was actually, talking to a colleague about Dubai and just suddenly thought, gosh, that could be an interesting place to work. So at the time, I cut together a video of all my producing, directing clips, like a voiceover show reel, but in video. And I sent it out to 2 companies in Dubai, got a full-time position. So came out in 2006, that was, so a long time ago now.
Where was that full-time position?
That full-time position was at NBC, yes, Dubai Media City. But I carried on doing my voiceovers, and they were quite flexible. I'd voice some stuff in-house for them in English, but they were predominantly Arabic. So I used to voice for clients at lunchtime. I'd pop out at lunch, sorry NBC, and later in the afternoon and do evening recordings. And that was really, honestly, that was my passion, I think.
Wow.
It felt like my NBC was my day job, and the voice work was my passion. I just enjoyed being in a studio, acting, trying to voice act, delivering what the client wanted, and it felt very instant and very immediate.
So what are the steps that you took, apart from, of course, developing a reel before sending it and getting a full-time position? What were the steps that you took for your voiceover career?
Good question. I mean, voiceover career-wise, you have to if you want more jobs, you want to have a variety of styles of read. So it is building up that voiceover demo with the clips of all those different styles of voice, so that a client can hear it and go, oh yes, she can do that kind of delivery. Let's use her. So it is building that up, because I think initially you start to find your natural voice, but then you need to expand and try and play with it to see what else you can do. You know, can you do character voices? Can you do high pitch? Can you do a lower tone? And I think that's how I kind of developed within the voiceover world.
Awesome. And what are some of the challenges that you faced initially when starting your voiceover industry here in Dubai?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been kind of pigeonholed. You know, a blonde female English voiceover artist, you get quite pigeonholed. I mean, when I came back in 2006, I probably started voicing for agencies in Dubai in 2007, 2008. But yes, and there weren't as many English female VOs here at the time. So luckily there was less competition, but it also meant there was a particular style of delivery often that was wanted. So I think the challenge was to get out of that pigeonhole to some extent.
And what was that pigeonhole, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, for me, it was a lot of beauty products, which I still love doing. I voiced for so many beauty products over the year, you know, from Dove to Braun to L'Oreal to Lux, yes, as you said, to Pond's. And a lot of them were TVCs in those days, And now, of course, it's gone into the more social media ads. Digital is the big space still, isn't it?
Indeed.
But yes, a lot of them were beauty products and softer tones, and like we said, the Just a Little Lux and similar, you know, scripts and taglines.
Yeah, and especially Marks and Spencer's. I mean, that's what stood out for me as well, you know, because I remember I was a producer on that with that specific client, and it's funny because they would call you by name. You know, we want Olivia to record all these different ads for Marks and Spencer.
Yeah.
How did it feel to have someone that was so loyal to you?
Yes, it's lovely when that happens, absolutely, because they want you and they don't just want any voice, because sometimes there are clients who are just like, okay, we need an English female VO, and they're not that choosy or specific about who they want. But when a client really wants you, it's hopefully because they know you're professional, you offer up suggestions within a session which they perhaps haven't thought about, or something a little different, and consistency. So for a client to be a regular, to choose you as a regular voice, I think it's really flattering. Yeah,
being a brand voice is definitely rewarding, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I worked with them for quite a few years. They seem to have gone quiet in the region, actually, I must admit. But I think I must have been the regular voice for about 5 or 6 years.
Yes, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
And can you recall, let's say, a memorable or pivotal moment in your voiceover career where, let's say you were at a constant level, you're getting called, let's say, for the sake of discussion, 3 times a week for recordings. Was there a moment for you where all of a sudden things started to shift and you started getting more and more jobs, more and more recording sessions?
I can't remember a pivotal point as such, but I remember a feeling within myself. I remember when I first started going to client studios, you didn't know who you were recording. So you turned up kind of quite wild, not knowing what the session would be, what the script would be, or how many clients would be in the room or in the studio, the other side of the screen and the mic, directing you. And that could be quite nerve-wracking. And I remember there was a lot of time where I used to have to talk to myself before I went into a studio and say, you know, Liv, calm down, breathe. And from my presenting days, one trick was always to count to 10 and breathe 10 deep breaths, long and slow, and that tends to calm you down. And I think the moment, was probably when I stopped ever getting nervous like that, I think.
Wow.
When you knew you could go into any studio with a new client, old client, with a room full of, could be even 5, 6, 7 creatives and decision makers, and not be nervous, and know you could deliver a good version of whatever script they gave you. That gave you a lot of confidence. Gave me a lot of confidence.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, dealing with self-doubt or imposter syndrome is something that a lot of us voice actors and people in general have to deal with.
Yes,
so how did you deal with these feelings?
Yeah, I think good question. I mean, sometimes you just have to brush things off, don't you? There are sometimes in any industry, whatever job you do, whoever you're working with, that somebody won't like what you do. And also as an English VO, sometimes I'd be working with different nationalities who would hear the way I say certain words and say, oh, that sounds strange, or can you say it more like this, or in a more American way, or can you shorten the end, you're elongating the ends of words, can you shorten them, and you have to just try and take that on the chin, because some of it is cultural, because we are working in a multicultural society, and some of it is about language, their language, your language. Some of it's about learned practices and trying to teach yourself to do things in a different way. And also just not taking it too personally. You know, we all get and need feedback at times, and I'm sure we all sometimes take that personally. I know I have in the past, especially creative feedback. It's quite hard to take sometimes. But I think you just have to think, okay, I've done the best, I've given them options, I've given them what I think's right, and what they've asked me to. And yeah, don't be too hard on yourself.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it can be really challenging, especially as you know, you're on a session and let's say you have 7 people on a live call.
Yeah.
Right? And you know what they say about too many cooks.
Yes.
Right? So what I'm hearing is that communication, knowing how to communicate, and also versatility is key. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, you're right. And communication is a big part of it, because when I'm in a booth, I'm not just trying to talk, I'm trying to listen. And sometimes there'll be a few voices that you're hearing, but you want to make sure that you're listening to the right voice, or that they've qualified what they want in terms of direction. So sometimes I'll hear someone say something in the session, I'll say, so sorry, do you mean you'd like me to try it this way? Do you mean you'd like me to try this line more conversationally, or give it more power on this word? Or so sometimes it is just a matter of communication and trying to get out of each other what you want.
Absolutely. We both know that sometimes, you know, a client will say things like, can you make it sound lower?
Yes.
And lower, I mean, to me, the first thing I think about is perhaps they mean a deeper tone.
Yeah.
So I ask them, do you mean deeper?
Yes.
And they go like, oh, no, I mean a lower energy.
Yeah.
So like, calm down. If I was like super excited, you know, like reading something with excitement, they want like less excitement.
Yes.
So you kind of have to figure that out, right?
You do. You have to kind of work with translating the direction to make sure you both understand it. Yes.
And can you share an experience or a recording session where you had to portray a particularly interesting character?
Yes, there's been a few particular character voices which I can think of. There was one actually. I was trying to remember which toothpaste brand it was, but it's actually Colgate.
Okay.
Colgate Slim Soft. So they were introducing their new brush with slim bristles. So there were 2 toothbrushes on screen. There was a smaller one and a taller one. I was the tall, thin one. And I had to do a character kind of ish voice for that, and talk about, you know, my thin tip bristles. They're 0.1 millimeter. They easily slip in between teeth, even down along the gum line.
Wow.
So that kind of, again, it was down the kind of slightly softer, more seductive route. But those kind of ones always stick in your mind, I think.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the power of advertising. If you do an interesting script, create an interesting script and an interesting dialogue, or an interesting message, then it sticks with not only the audience, but the people who worked on it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you still remember that script. And
yes.
Which year did you record that?
Gosh, that was probably 2000 and... I don't know. Good question. I don't know. It's probably 2009, 2010.
Wow.
I
And
mean,
you
again,
still remember the script. That's the power of the script.
I do. I mean, again, I've used that on various show reels across the years. I mix my show reel up, take things in, put things out. But yeah, that's another reason I remember it. Yes, for sure.
We both know that the industry nowadays especially is extremely competitive. I mean, we've seen a big change, especially after COVID, like during and after COVID. Suddenly there are a lot more voiceover actors. How do you navigate through auditions, the sea of auditions, and how do you handle rejection as well?
Yes. Yeah, that is a challenge, and the industry has changed. It's become, a lot more voices in the industry. Like you say, after COVID, it's gone a lot more online, which means you're competing for rates from different regions, not just the GCC, the U.A.E. whichever region you live in. Yeah, so you're competing with every region. And the audition process has become more common, yes. Clients, even if they hear your show reel and hear lots of different samples and think, oh yeah, she could be good for that script, they still often want you to demo a few lines of the actual script, which is a shame, really. And I think it's twofold. I was thinking about this. It comes from, I think, sometimes, sadly, some clients who are less experienced and they're nervous about casting a voice and that voice actually getting to the session and not being able to achieve what they want them to. So they then ask, 3 or 5 voices to audition a script, and they think, okay, that's definitely what will work. But I think it also comes, unfortunately, from the voiceover artists flooding the industry, and some perhaps not being as experienced and cutting together a nice show reel, which they send to clients, but getting into the session and they're not being they're not able to take direction as well as experienced longer term voiceover artists. So I think it's for both reasons that this audition part of the industry is happening, but it creates a lot more work, and I don't think most of the time you get a better result. I think really because you audition for something, but you're auditioning, recording a few lines of a script without the director there, without the copywriter there, not giving you the actual direction and not trying different things. So all the clients are really getting is 1 or 2 versions of how it could be, rather than getting the great version where if they'd have cast you for the session, they would have got. So I think it's not great for the industry, for the clients or for the voiceover artists. Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And actually, I was having a talk with Ron Bagnulo.
Oh, yes.
About that exact subject. And we were saying that how can one audition without having the backing track, the music track?
Absolutely, yeah.
The video, to get a sense of what are the visuals that are going to be playing while you voice it. And these are very important factors.
Yes.
So imagine, we can both look at a script, and of course, with our experience, we can figure out the kind of delivery and tonality that a certain script requires. However, what you think should be done might not be what the client wants.
Exactly, yes.
So it's like you said, you can send 2 variations of that audition script, but the client is looking for something completely different.
Yeah, and you're not a mind reader, and yes. And like you say, music makes a massive difference. You can, for people who don't know, when you're in a voiceover session, sometimes you have the music, coming through your headphones, your cans, don't you? So you get that feel, and you can deliver a voice that matches it, whether it's more upbeat, more funky, more hard-hitting. And sometimes you've been played it before, and you have that in your mind as you're giving a delivery. But you're right, without seeing visuals, without knowing what music might be used, all you're doing when you do an audition is a stab in the dark in terms of what the director might want.
Absolutely.
And the chances are you'll miss that mark.
Like you said, we can't read minds, right?
No. So the best thing is always to go for a voice really that you trust or that you believe can do it. Have faith in yourself that you can direct them, and have faith in them, and get into the studio or get into a live recording in their home studio and direct that way, and that will always get the best result.
I can absolutely relate to that. And actually, while you were talking about the differences between how it was before, and I can see it both as a voiceover actor and as an audio producer.
Yes.
Because back in the day, and we're talking 2015 up to 2020, when I'd send voices out to clients, you'd send a folder with multiple demo reads.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say I'd send your corporate reads, I'd send your radio spots, your character demos, all in one folder, so that the client can see your versatility and the difference of tonalities that you're able to produce. And they would select their talent based on these demos.
Based on that, yes.
Nowadays, like you said, it seems like, I believe it stems from fear a little bit. Like you said, not being able to get the exact delivery that they imagine. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is a shame. It is.
It made it a bit more complicated,
Yes, more complicated and less organic, because the great thing is when you're in a live recording and and you work together and you come up with something good at the end, and that's what it should be. It's a creative process. It's not, okay, it needs to be like this. We do it like this. We don't vary from this.
Absolutely.
We're
so
a creative
rigid,
process. Yes,
Yeah.
you have to be fluid. You have to be creative, and it is that industry. That's part of the industry.
Yeah. Liv, you've recorded for some of the biggest brands across the globe and in the U.A.E. and GCC countries, and we're talking Lux, Samsung, Dove, Eldar, Emirates Airlines, just to name a few. How was your experience recording for so many different brands, and was there a session in particular that stood out for you?
Yes, every brand's different, isn't it? Some have big creative agencies behind them, branding agencies. Some have small in-house teams. That can obviously affect things in terms of the recording and in terms of what you go for. And of course, some have very it depends on their brand guidelines as well, doesn't it? If they're irreverent as a brand, or if they're very serious as a brand. Obviously voicing for banks, which I've done as well, tends to be more serious. But I'm trying to think of one that stood out in particular. Yes. There's been so many. It's hard to pinpoint one.
Well, it could be an easy session, a session where you were done in a take or two, or it could be a session that you really enjoyed the script.
Yeah.
Or
Again, it's the character ones are always the most fun, and when the script is good, it's an absolute pleasure. I remember I also voiced Cocoa Pops at the end. I was the giraffe, I think it is, at the end of the Cocoa Pops social media spot. That was fun. Also did an apple. It was an apple for an Apple store. And again, that was quite a sexy read. It's supposed to be kind of an Adam and Eve kind of scenario.
Okay. And who eats the apple first?
Well, exactly. I was supposed to be tempting Adam to eat the apple.
Nice.
Yeah. So there are so many that stand out, and then you forget them, and then like you say, I do document all the jobs I've done are in a spreadsheet from going back in Dubai to 2007 or whenever it was, and when you go through it, you see the clients that you work with so much in that year, and then they disappear for a year, they use another voice, or they're not as present in the region. And so you see how the changes and the trends and how it all changes. And voice work has gone down. I hate to say it, but there were the heydays, weren't there? The heydays of the voice world. Certainly, in terms of fees and in terms of being in demand. But as a voiceover artist, you tend to go through stages of clients really wanting you, and then they'll suddenly change to a new voice they've either just heard and it's just kind of the way of the industry, really. You can't always be the favourite voice. And a new brand might find you, and then they love you and they'll use you for years, but then they think, oh no, we need to change it up a bit, so they go and find another voice. So you've got to try not to take offence with that. It's always a shame when you lose a good client, and it's not necessarily, like I say, because you've done anything wrong or because you aren't a good voiceover artist. It might be because their branding's changed, or they just want to shake things up. So you have to try and take those knocks on the chin.
That's true. Actually, it's funny you say that, because for me, in the last 5 years, I've had the honor and pleasure to record for both Amazon and Nespresso, in both English and Arabic. And in my mind, I keep telling myself on a daily basis, how grateful I am.
Yes.
Because in any day, this can all disappear.
Absolutely.
So I'm as if I'm preparing myself mentally, because it's something that you never know. Like you said, they might want to go for a female voice, and female empowerment and everything. And you have to learn not to take these things personal, and also to build some resilience.
Yes.
Because you need that in the industry, especially with rejections and auditions not getting selected or approved.
Yes, you do have to have a thick skin at times. It's probably not as bad as face-to-face acting, the amount of auditions they have to go through and knockbacks. But yes, you have to have a thick skin and take these things as they come. But I think that's the one good thing. One good thing. It's a very good thing about being freelance, because I'm on a freelance visa now. I kind of work for myself. But the great thing is when you get work, you're so happy.
That's true.
You're so happy that a client has chosen you. I think in my old full-time jobs days, when you get given more and more work, you're not always happy, are you?
Yeah.
That's the contrast. Like clients don't realize when they choose us, we're like, it's like it's happiness, and it's not just about the money. It's about being in demand, being appreciated. But yes, in the same breath, the knockbacks you have to try to take on the chin.
And balance both.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Liv, you're a creative copywriter, a creative entrepreneur, and a voiceover actress.
Yes.
And I'm curious, how do you make sure that you manage your time effectively to make sure that you're being as productive as possible in all these different areas of your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I try to achieve it on a daily basis. I'm not sure some days I don't, but I do try to have a routine, because especially I'm not going to a studio or an office every day. So I tend to get up in the morning, either go for a walk, do some exercise, walk to the coffee shop. I call the coffee shops my office when I'm not recording. So if I'm writing a creative script, I'll probably work in a coffee shop with a nice cup of coffee. And I like the environment. And then you're not on your own, and you're still getting inspiration and, from outside and from around you, from what is around you. So I try to keep a routine. And then if I have auditions to do, I'll try and do those in one slot. But generally with auditions and things, people want them instantly, don't they? So you have to kind of be ready. I have a good home studio, but also if I travel, I take my microphone, and I have a travel set up with me as well.
Nice.
Because you have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
But there are some days where, you perhaps haven't had a call for a while for work, and you're feeling a bit low, and you have to know how to kind of pick yourself up and keep yourself motivated. And I do watch podcasts if I'm trying to learn new things, or business podcasts about all kinds of things for when I have quieter days, but to keep my mind active and to not let yourself dwell on something. I think that's definitely one of the tools I use. Nice.
What types of what podcasts? I'm curious.
I watch a lot of crypto podcasts.
Okay.
A lot of cryptocurrency and financial podcasts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you into that? Investing in crypto?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Nice.
I've been kind of watching the industry for quite a long time and learning. And this region is very open to that industry, so it's interesting times.
Nice.
Yes.
So when you need to take your mind off of those quieter times in our industry, because we both know that our industry is very seasonal, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, for me personally, June, July, August, I think I had one session in June.
Yeah.
And then July and August was like quiet, very quiet.
Yes, summers can be very quiet, can't they?
And all of a sudden, September, October, November, it's like, whoa! Sometimes like 3 bookings in a day, like what's happening?
Yes, yeah. You have to take the rough with the smooth. Like you say, you can go from being very busy and stressed and kind of trying to stay focused to kind of going, anyone going to call me? Where's my phone? Anyone going to call?
Yeah.
Trying to manifest clients to call.
I guess that's part of being an entrepreneur as well, not having that stability, stable work.
Absolutely, and I think I try to get into other areas. I'm actually helping a friend at the moment with his storyboard, and it will be his voiceover for his Web3 project.
Nice.
Which I could tell you about, actually. So yes, I try to get involved in different things. I'm trying to learn, because we always have to be learning and developing and evolving, particularly in this industry, I think. When we look back to years ago, you didn't have to be as technically minded as a voiceover artist, did you? You went to a studio, you had a sound engineer who managed everything. Whereas now, voiceover artists have to also know distance away from the mic, how it affects things, what mic you're going to have, what your setup is like. They have to know how to process files. So yes, it's much more technical now as well than it was.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we saw a huge shift in the industry where we basically went to studios physically to record sessions. And then COVID happened. And after that, more and more clients are leaning towards live remote sessions, on Zoom, Google Meet, Session Link Pro, etc., etc. How did you adapt to these changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think luckily I'd already had my home studio set up, because I'd done a few of those sessions via Source Connect or IPDTL years ago, or
ISDN.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, that was the old one, wasn't it? Yeah. I never actually had that software, but I used to direct voiceover artists using ISDN. So I already had my setup, which was I think key. But it's a different type of, I still miss going to studios and recording and having that, seeing their faces and interacting in that live session. Much as it's live direction, I miss the studio time. And when I'm in Dubai working with studios and they still have a physical studio, I will often still try to come to their studio to record. And generally the sound engineer is so appreciative. Like, Liv, thank you so much for coming to see me. They're sitting in their suite in their studio on their own, and it's nice for them to see
for sure
people and interact. So yes, definitely after COVID it went more remote, didn't it? You had to have a home studio. It wasn't really a possibility not to, was it? And again, I guess that's it often takes big events in the world and history and society to create these changes, doesn't it? Like AI will be one of them, won't it? Which will affect our industry. So yes, you just have to try and adapt where you can and roll with it.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about AI in a minute. I'd just like to go back a little bit.
Sure.
And ask you about your career in the UK.
Yes.
How did that affect your voiceover career?
Yeah, I think, like I say, because I came from the producing directing route, I was used to actually, before I started doing voiceovers, I was directing voiceover artists.
Okay.
So I used to choose voiceover artists from the agency books in London and direct the sessions in the sound studio. So I kind of came from that side, I think.
Nice.
And so when I first started doing voiceovers myself, it's because I felt I knew how to interpret a script and how to translate that into a voice. Because I used to think of myself, how would I tell myself that I was doing it right or wrong? Or what would I say to do differently? Or what would I say to emphasize? Or, what's the key things I need to achieve in this session? So yeah, that's, I think, what I took from London and from my past career into the voiceover world. Yeah, into being a voice artist. The
creative approach and the variety in tone as well, and emphasis on specific keywords.
Yes, and just understanding it from both sides, I think, as well. Because when you've been on the other side, you kind of know, you can understand what they're hearing or what they might want differently or how it's going to translate when it's on video or if it's a radio ad. It depends on the medium as well, doesn't it? So yeah, I think that's what I took from it. Yeah.
Awesome. Before I go to AI, I'd like to ask you a hypothetical question.
Yes.
And I ask that question to all my guests because I just love the variety of answers, and it's great for me to able to hear all these different opinions about the industry. And this question I like to call the three truths. Okay, so let's say someone comes up to you, hey Liv, I'm really passionate and interested in joining the voiceover industry. I want to become a professional voiceover actor. What are three truths that you learned from your years of experience, from your career, the thousands of sessions that you've done throughout the years?
I guess three things. One thing is probably a little bit negative. One thing is it's a tough industry. It's not, unfortunately, at the heyday it once was. Harping back to London days, there was a few very famous voiceover artists who were being used by all the studios in Soho. And there was one called Big Al. And he was a big guy, but he had a very deep English voice. I can't do his voice, but very deep English voice. And he was used across so many promos, TV commercials in the industry. And he used to have a driver who drove him around on a daily basis around the centre of London to these studios so he could make as many sessions as possible and maximize his time and his money.
Wow.
And rumors of what he was kind of raking in financially at the time, I can't even remember now. But that was really the heyday. And now things have changed. I think everything has gone online more to a large extent. Like I say, you're competing with voices from different regions. Like whichever country you live in, you're not just competing with those people, you're competing with people in South Africa or America or other countries, other Arabic countries, if you're doing Arabic voices. So, yes, it's a tougher industry than it was. And rates, haven't gone up with inflation.
That's true.
Yes. So yeah, it's a tough industry, and you have to realize that, because I think a lot of new people getting into the industry think, oh, I can get that much for reading one script, or I can get that much for an hour of my time. And it's like, yeah, you can, but you might only get booked for an hour of your time every 3 days.
Yeah. Or once every month. Like.
Yes, exactly. So you have to weigh those things up. So it's being realistic about that if you are wanting to get into the industry. Yes. Yeah.
So the first big thing would be it's like a Wild West. It's very competitive.
It's a Wild West, yes. It's very competitive. You have to realize that, yeah. I guess the second thing, if you decide, okay, I'm going to go for it anyway, I'm going to try, is to, if you haven't done many voiceovers before naturally in your workplace or wherever, is to not try to sound like a voiceover, because people think, oh, it needs to sound like this or whatever. You have to find your authentic voice first. I think that's the key thing, to find your authentic voice first, and then you can start to play with your voice and do different character voices and different styles of read that will sound good. Because I think that's the hardest thing for a new voiceover. And you do hear it sometimes still, on the radio here. I heard one the other day, I won't mention what brand, but I heard one and I knew that the voiceover artist was very new to it. And you can just pick it out. And I'm sure it's not just me hearing that, so I'm surprised clients go with it, but they were a very green voice.
I see.
Yeah.
How could you tell? What were the characteristics of that specific delivery? Or
it wasn't quite like she was just reading the script, but there was just the intonation, it wasn't in the right place. There was no kind of natural flow to it, because sometimes it's about the timing. It's not just about the words you emphasize or the way you say it. It's about timing. And it was just very rigid. Yes. It's very rigid, and it sounded, hard to exactly say. So number two, number two is practice, and try a variety of things. Find your voice first. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I did have a number 3. I'm trying to remember what it was. I guess what we talked about earlier, really, which is patience. If you're in a session, you can't get frustrated. If you don't understand what a client's trying to tell you in terms of the direction, you have to try and qualify it more and find that out. Or if you're doing a delivery and they're like, no, that's not what I mean, or no, that's not what I want, you have to try and keep calm and find a way to find out what it is they do want, because it might be a language barrier that the direction they want to take isn't coming across, or it might be that it can be your fault too. So keep calm, try and just come to a good end product, which is what we all want, isn't it?
Absolutely. And now, talking about AI.
Yes, the dreaded AI.
Yes, and the many challenges. We both know that nowadays, and more, we see those AI websites come out, like Revoicer, and just a couple at the top of my mind. That's the only one I can name. Spreacher, another one.
Yeah.
Don't
use these sites. Don't use them.
Yeah, don't use them. We'll put a disclaimer, like, do not use AI.
Don't mention any, Joe.
Hashtag hire human.
Yes, that's a great hashtag.
Yeah, it's much better to hire humans.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah. We've seen it, like, it can literally clone any voice.
Yes, yeah.
What are your thoughts on these developments, and what can professional voiceover actors do to keep adding value and differentiate ourselves from these AI clones?
Yes, it is scary for the industry. We can't stop change, can we? And I think at the moment, predominantly AI is being used as a first point of call, whether it's voice work or copywriting. People are going to these AI programs and getting a first guide voice, but then they're
dummy
realizing,
VO.
Yes, and perhaps using that to do their edit, and then thinking, okay, it's not good enough. We need a real voice. We do need to hire human, and luckily coming to one of us. So that's good for now, but I think that will change, and it's. But I think, I'm hoping that in the future we will still, as humans, be able to provide that something different, which a client didn't know they want. And it's like we say, when you're in a live session, you can sometimes suggest something to the clients in terms of your delivery that they hadn't thought about. And if they're only giving the direction that they think they wanted, or to the AI bot, they're only going to get that delivery. Whereas with a real person, you can get a variety of deliveries, ones you haven't thought about, and it's a much more interactive, creative process. And I'm hoping that is the way we will be able to keep being employed as humans in the voice world.
Hire humans, people. Hire humans.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
It's like you said, you know, I completely agree with that, by the way. AI might be able to come up with a voiceover super fast and on the spot, but having that dialogue between a human and a human client, offering your opinion, your expertise on how a certain script should be read, offering different variations, different intonations on the spot, I think it's one of our many strong points as opposed to AI.
Definitely. That's completely different. And I think that's something that, AI power and robots will never be able to completely emulate. Hopefully. Here's hoping.
Yeah. Let's see in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have another chat in 5 years, the Voices of Dubai
back.
2.0.
Yes, exactly. And I'll be a robot.
You'll be a robot. Yeah, I'll be a cyborg.
Of myself, I think, unfortunately. Oh dear.
I'll
we
have
don't
a
need
robot
two of
arm.
me. Yeah.
Imagine two Livs. Liv's voice and Liv's voice 2.0.
Exactly. Oh gosh, what the future holds, hey? But yeah, you can't resist it. You have to try and go with it and move with the times and find a way to sustain yourself. Yes.
Yeah, and adapt to changes, and like you said earlier, keep learning. Keep educating yourself. Keep improving, and let's see what the future holds. Right?
Let's see. I'm intrigued.
Liv, I want to take this time to acknowledge you for first for being here, sharing your experience, sharing your knowledge, and those learnings that you took from these different sessions that you've done across the years. And I was very happy to record with you.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to so many more sessions in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know it's been a pleasure working with you. We've worked in so many studios and your own productions now, your own studio. And that's what's so nice in this industry. It's about the people.
Yeah.
It's about the people and the interactions and the creativity that you can come up with.
Absolutely. So here's another hashtag. It's about the people.
Yeah, exactly. Should we start one?
T's and C's apply.
T's and C's apply.
Thank you so much, Liv.
Thank you, Joe.